Mary Sue, you can see the results of it right here. Boarded up, windows and doors, the whole front of the house. Actually, chunks of siding lying right here in the front lawn. But take one good, hard last look at Freddie Cantrell's fortress, because as you can see right now, well, Mary Sue, they are angry and frustrated, angry over what they believe really happened to Jermaine Pope here in the Elk River, and frustrated over what's been said publicly about their son. Of course, the shocking part of all this, not just the murder scene right over here where you see the deputies working, not just the crime scene tape here at the Miracle Acres apartment, but the school bus from the St. Albans area right over here. The blizzard of '96 is left behind, the ice of '96. Just a few feet away from the Punch and Cookies of that neighborhood watch party, we found this discarded bag used for crack cocaine lying right here on the sidewalk on Jackson Street. The vandalism at this adult activity center actually forced Seneca officials to lock up, leaving about 15 mental health clients with nowhere to go during the day. It was only today, on day 4, that rescue workers were able to get close to hundreds of stranded victims and hundreds of thousands of dollars in damage.
We're here to let you know we're here to get her out. We are going to get her out or die trying. We're looking for Debbie Tinsley. I'll go for a check.
All right, we're going to be able to access this patient now.
Debbie Tinsley may have pneumonia, and she may be a lot worse off because she's been waiting 3 days for an ambulance. But until now, all the homes around here were flooded in and cut off.
I thought about putting her on my back and carrying her out of here. It would have been kind of hard, but...
Sissonville firefighters set out by boat and by truck. Their mission to reach 300 to 400 people who are stranded since Saturday. The biggest problem out here, besides all this water, is that there's no phone service, so anyone who hasn't been heard from has to be presumed missing. And it could take a while to account for everyone.
He got all the way up to the house. He talked to somebody, said everybody was all right.
Folks in the Cicerone area call it the worst flooding in more than 50 years.
That's the watermark right there.
And officials are just now getting a first look at much of the damage.
All ruined. 39 inches deep in the floor.
And there is late word from Sissonville tonight. Rescue crews found one person who had been stranded without food or water for several days. That person now in the hospital suffering from dehydration. Of course, rescue crews have also been helping out elderly people who were stuck without help of any kind since the weekend. Mary Sue, you can see the results of it right here. Boarded up, windows and doors, the whole front of the house. Actually, chunks of siding lying right here in the front lawn. But this was no Halloween prank. Police say that this was the work of a drunk driver. It was a Halloween fright that Betsy Hathaway will never forget.
Worst sound I've ever heard in my life. It was like a freight train just coming through my front room.
It wasn't a train, it was a car. St. Albans police say Michael Hoover was driving drunk on Roosevelt Avenue when he ran a stop sign, ran into a car, ran into Hathaway's home, and turned it into chaos.
That's the board that came off the wall and flew over and hit my car. A ceramic flower pot that used to be in the living room, and it got thrown into the kitchen. The siding flew across there and hit that.
This is actually the second time in recent years that this same house has been struck by a drunken driver. This time it cost Betsy Hathaway her home and her prized possession.
This was my grandmother's, and it's from Germany, so. You know, they always say everybody's like one paycheck away from being homeless, and I said, yeah, that about figures it out here.
Witnesses say with the engine still running, the driver simply ditched the car in this mess, took off, ran, and kept going until he got to a house in Nitro, where police caught up with him more than an hour later.
Hoover is charged with DUI, leaving the scene, no insurance, and other counts. As for Betsy Hathaway...
Oh, I don't think I'll celebrate any more Halloweens after this.
And Betsy Hathaway, of course, says she's not going to live here for now. She's staying with friends, and she says she's glad to have them at a time like this. Mary Sue. That's right, Russ. That's even what the accuser is saying. Now, that accuser, Laura Murphy, says the supposed sexual abuse for which her stepfather is serving a lot of prison time simply did not happen. The problem is she's never said these things out loud until now.
I'm sorry. And I hope that you can find in your heart to forgive me.
Her words are for her stepfather, Robert Jarvis. Her words also once put him in prison, where he's been for nearly 4 years.
I've had it rough, and all my family has really had it rough. I've done a lot of hard time over.
And he may do a lot more. Jarvis is serving 21 to 45 years at Mount Olive. He was convicted of fondling and molesting his stepdaughter in 1992. But in 1995, Laura Murphy signed an affidavit saying she made up the story because she disliked Jarvis and wanted out of his home. So why is Jarvis still in prison? Because when Laura Murphy was called to testify at a hearing for a new trial, she said no, she wasn't taking back her story. And why did she change her tune a second time? She now tells us because she was afraid of being prosecuted for perjury.
I was scared too because I have 2 kids and I don't want them taken away.
Court transcripts show there was no physical evidence in the case, so the other major evidence was testimony from Jarvis's 2 children, who said under oath they witnessed the sex abuse. But they too are now telling a different story. You both testified against Robert at trial. Were you telling the truth?
No.
Calhoun County Prosecutor Tony Morgan says he wouldn't rule out reopening the case, but says simply nothing can happen until Laura Murphy can testify in person. Morgan says, quote, signing an affidavit is one thing. She's never recanted to me. But Murphy says she's ready to do that now.
Then I know that he can get out and he can go on with his life. And if there is prejudice charges against me, then I'll find some way to go with mine.
I forgive her, you know, if that's what it takes, you know. There's no hard villains.
We talked again with the county prosecutor, Tony Morgan, late this afternoon. He said he remains skeptical about Laura Murphy's statement simply because she's changed her story twice. But when we informed him that the other 2 primary witnesses in the trial had also recanted, he said if all 3 have recanted, they need to come talk to him. Rosemary Sue.
The same minister accused of murdering his wife.
Our Matthew Hilk is live in the newsroom with our exclusive story. Matthew, this is certainly a surprising turn.
Surprising and saddening for those who know this young girl facing a life or death situation. Now, we first told you about the Christy Schumann Fund last fall. The administrator of that fund is the Landmark Church of God in Nitro, where Michael Flippo is the pastor. Now, several sources close to the fund, as well as church members, tell News 8 that more than $13,000 have been reported missing, and those sources say that Flippo was the only man with the access to that fund.
8 on Your Side first introduced you to 14-year-old Christy Schumann last October. She was, and still is, in dire need of liver and pancreas transplants. At the time, the Landmark Church of God set up the Christy Schumann Fund. Since then, it raised about $84,000 for the girl. But now, several sources close to the fund and church members confirmed to News 8 that $13,199 have turned up missing from the account. That discovery was made shortly after Flippo's wife was found murdered, when donors started asking if the fund was still intact. The fact is, the fund had to be frozen for several days. This church financial statement from May 9th calls the Christy Schumann Fund inaccessible. A source tells us that it was Reverend Flippo who froze the account at the request of church officials when questions started arising. The account has since been unfrozen and moved into other people's names. Those sources also say that Flippo was supposed to tell the bank to give account access to several people, but that in fact he was the only one ever named on the papers. One source close to the account says Flippo told church members he did nothing wrong, that he moved the money into an investment account to benefit Christy Schumann's fund. But the source says no evidence ever turned up that that other investment account ever existed. The church has reportedly assured the family that it will make good on the missing money. A source says the church overseer has received more than $10,000 from Flippo to be used to fix the discrepancy in the account. As for Christy Schumann, her father says she's doing well now, but that she had a very hard time a few weeks ago when this issue started to surface. Ray Schumann didn't want to comment about the missing money until after he meets with church officials tomorrow evening.
And once again, we should stress that no one, absolutely no one, has publicly accused Flippo of wrongdoing in regards to the fund. Only they say that the money is in fact missing and that he did have control of the account. Now, we very much wanted to talk to Reverend Flippo about this story, but we were told by the person who answered the phone at his home that there'd be no comment there. Calls to his attorney were not returned to us. Back to you.